Thailand. I want to go to credit card debt now. There are concerns today about the ballooning bill that's being racked up by households and businesses right across this country. It turns out that everyone, from government right down to the average Joe, is sitting under a mountain of borrowed cash they may never pay back. A report by ASIC has found that Australians are carrying more than $45 billion. $45,000 million in credit card debt that most of us will never pay back in our lifetimes, apparently. 1 in 6 people have outstanding credit card balances, with the corporate regulator accusing banks and credit card companies of lending money to people they know aren't capable of meeting repayments. To help get our heads around this, I thought we'd speak with Martin North. He's a finance analyst from Digital Finance Analytics. Thanks for joining us, Martin. Surely people manage their credit card debt sensibly. Obviously not everyone. Some people get into trouble, but don't most of us manage it sensibly?
Well, it's interesting. The credit card is a weird and wonderful device. If you think about it, it's a payment mechanism and also a credit mechanism. So some people use it just to make payments and get rewards and never rack up debt on them. But unfortunately, about 2/3 of people who use the credit cards put debt on the cards, and then a lot of them get into difficulty. So this is actually, it can be a very dangerous instrument, particularly when people are not necessarily clear on the interest rates they're being charged. And sometimes they get attracted by low switching rates and then move the credit card bill somewhere else but never pay it off. And that's what ASIC's getting at. So this is a big deal. And it's another example of, I think, banks not looking after their customers, not behaving sensibly with regard to their customers and fixating more on maximising their profits. So this is another example, I think.
Limits are a good way, of course. You like to keep a low limit on your credit card so you can't get into too much debt, but so often the banks then offer you, why don't you increase your limit? And that can be a real trap.
Yeah, well, now the law is that they can't just willy-nilly make you offers. You actually have to go in advance that say, yes, I'm prepared to accept an offer. But yeah, there's been a history up till quite recently of big limits being offered to people who really shouldn't be encouraged to take more credit. The other thing about limits is it sort of helps and it sort of doesn't, insofar that you've still got to think about those repayments, right? So people talk about the minimum repayments each month. And the point is, if you only make the minimum repayment, even if you're within your limit, that's going to take ages and ages and ages to basically pay down, right?
It is a minimum, a bare minimum. Look, I'm probably a perfect example here because I could not tell you the interest rate I'm paying on my credit card. What's it likely to be?
Well, it could be anywhere between 11 or 12% up to about 28%, right?
Still over 20%.
Yes, no, there are definitely.
That's outrageous.
It is, and what's interesting, of course, if you think about the cash rate, it's never been lower, and so there's definitely a question mark in my mind about the optimal rates versus what they currently are. I think banks are actually paying, charging a lot. They're also charging a lot on fees as well. So every time you use your card, you may well incur fees as well. So there's a whole bunch of revenue-generating structures inside the credit card, which ASIC has pointed now to, and let's hope that the banks begin to react accordingly and begin to think about the interests of their customers rather than just the profits.
Let's hope so indeed. Thanks so much for joining us, Martin North there. Let's hope the banks really need to improve their image. This is one area they could clean things up. I didn't realise that credit card interest rates could still be over 20%. That is absurd. Try and keep your limit low and try and keep up with your repayments is obviously the advice there. Try and keep your debt as low as possible.